Today, we're diving into the final part of my conversation with Kirk Martin from the Calm Parenting Podcast. But before we jump in, if you haven't listened to part 1 or 2 yet, pause right here and go listen to those first. Trust me, you don't want to miss the foundation we've laid out through these conversations. And today, we're tackling some of the biggest parenting struggles, like getting your kids to do chores without having a complete war in the house, messy rooms, do they really matter? And how to stop feeling like the bad guy in parenting. This month's focus has been all about helping you see how your relationships impact your balance. Because let's be real, whether it's with your partner, your friends, your coworkers, and this week, your kids, the people in your life can either support your peace or throw it completely off track. And with any relationship, boundaries are essential, especially with your children. So if you've been struggling to create those boundaries without the guilt, make sure you grab my Boundaries Made Simple freebie. It's designed to help you set those clear, loving limits without the power struggles so you can keep your sanity and really strengthen and nurture your relationships, especially with yourself. You can find the link in the show notes. Are you feeling overwhelmed trying to juggle all the many hats you wear as a working mom? Do you want more quality time with your family without distraction of work, with time alone to take care of yourself and your needs? Welcome to Mom Wife Career Life. I'm Carrie, a wife, mom of 3, and a recovering perfectionist. In this podcast, I will teach you how to create balance in your life by implementing healthy habits, organizing your home and your schedule, being intentional with your time and in your relationships, and most importantly, how to start putting your needs first because no one can pour from an empty cup. Grab that second cup of coffee, or if you're anything like me, your third. It's time to dive into today's episode, Mom Wife Career Lives. With us this week is CelebrateCalm.com founder and Calm Parenting podcast host, Kirk Martin, who has shown over 1 million parents how to stop the yelling, stop the defiance, and most importantly, stop those power struggles with the most strong-willed children. Kirk is known for his very practical strategies and scripts delivered with not only humor, but with compassion too. We're jumping right back into where we left off yesterday. So another question, how do you get strong-willed children to help around the house? Just, I know cleaning their room is a normal teenage thing that they don't do, but just like basic chores. I've lost that somewhere along the way. We were doing great. And then everything just kind of fell to the wayside.
Okay, I'll give you my answer I have to give, and then I'll give my honest answer. So you can be tough and you can say, hey, here's the deal. Every day, I ask you to do 3 chores, 3 things in the house. And in return for that, I run a meal service, a taxi service, healthcare service, right? Like all the mom services are like 30 different services, right? You take them places, you buy them stuff. You don't do your chores, your responsibilities. I'm not doing mine. Wait, seriously? You're not going to take me to soccer practice? You're not going to drive me to my friend's house? No, try me. And so there's no drama and I follow through on it. So there's a tough approach. You guys do your things. I do mine. Wait, you're not going to feed us? Yeah, you're not going to die. We live in America, right? You've got enough food. You can fix your own mac and cheese and eat it 8 straight days. So I can do the tough approach. I will give you my real answer that we ended up doing with Casey, the strong-willed son. I like to joke that Casey was virtually useless as a child in our home because he was. He didn't do a lot, but from a young age, from age 12, he had a job outside the home. He used to officiate hockey games at the local ice rink. So he had to get up early on Saturday and Sunday mornings, go to the ice rink, clock in, work, turn in his timesheet, do his job, be very responsible. There was an older couple down the street. He would go down to their house and do stuff for them because he loved them. The old lady fed him, and the old guy played guitar with Johnny Cash back in the day. So he was cool to my son because Casey played guitar. So here's where I took it, which is I am raising kids, not to be kids, but to be adults. And their job in the real world is to be responsible and respectful in the real world. Well, Casey was responsible and respectful at the ice rink, at the old people's house. He was responsible, conscientious, followed through. Everybody loved him. But if you asked him to clean his room, like, right. So I think that is an option. I think another option, since you have 3 kids, is to divvy up the chores and say, hey, there are 10 things that have to happen every week. You guys figure out division of labor, how you want it to get done. Now, the strong willed child will often pay one of the other kids to do his or her chores and then manipulate the people pleaser among your kids to do his or her other chores. And your appropriate response is that's good thinking because you're a born entrepreneur. You don't want to do stupid, boring stuff yourself. So you are going to delegate to other people and you're going to take advantage of compliant people pleasers because you don't have to pay them as much because that's the way life works. And that's what you're doing when you're 14. So I'm good with a tough approach. I'm good with saying, hey, let's let's rethink what are we really after here? What are the qualities we're trying to build into our child? And the one I'll just reinforce is strong-willed kids tend to do adult type jobs really well. So doing little meaningless stuff, not so much. If you were to ask them like, "Hey, would you make me coffee every morning?" They'll become like a barista and they'll say, "Hey, can I put in some healthier things?" I have kids I've worked with who will change the oil in the family car, but they won't take the trash out, right? So you get to decide as a parent, and then you can try the thing of like a division of labor. Look, one of your kids might be a kid who likes checking things off of the list, and they're like, "I'll do all six of those chores, mommy. I love doing that." You're like, "Good. You're going to be great working for a company one day. You're going to be so conscientious." And then you're probably actually gonna work for your sister one day. And I have a brother that worked with us for a while in our company, and I'd like, "Brett, don't you wanna have vision for something larger?" He's like, "Kirky," it's my brother, so I call it, he's like, "Kirky, no, just tell me what to do every day, and if I check off like 10 things, I will have had the best day ever." So my younger brother, he's a people pleaser. He just loves checking off checklists. So I did the visionary big thinking and Casey did idea stuff. So anyway, I don't worry about chores that much. I don't think there's a correlation between kids who clean their rooms or don't and they end up being slobs. Our son was a train wreck as a kid with his room. He lives 7 minutes from us now. I was at his house last night. His house is spotless because it's his house and he's grown up. So I just close the bedroom door and don't look at it.
So hard. It's especially when the kids share a room, but you're making
Sure.
me feel a lot better because I think what I do want parents to understand from this conversation is that whatever your kid is like now, it's not going to be who they grow up to be. Like if they're not cleaning their room and they're not fully functioning in your house, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be successful in life. And I think that's like you said earlier, like it's the anxiety of, oh my God, if they can't get this right, are they ever going to get life right? And that anxiety that parents hold.
100%. I think my first 2 podcast episodes of this year were on parental anxiety because it just sabotages everything. I mean, it starts with if you have a strong-willed 4-year-old, you're going to get calls from preschool. Your daughter, your son cannot sit still. They don't sit still in circle time. They don't listen. They don't follow directions. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Do we have to medicate them? How are they ever going to be successful? And it's like they're 4. Right? They're doing all these arbitrary and then your teenagers and your tweens, like, I kinda joke, but it's true. If you have a boy, a middle school age boy, guarantee I would bet $1,000 with every family. They're going to sit in the same hoodie sweatshirt for like 12 straight days, and they wanna play video games. That's just what they do, and they're going to look like this useless blob who literally does nothing but grunt and eat occasionally. And so your natural thought is like, well, Jody's 13. He doesn't have the skills. And so I'll give you one cool thing that I noticed with Casey that changed our relationship. He was that kid until I realized when our son played video games back in the day, he had all the skills necessary to be successful in life. He was persistent, he was goal oriented, he didn't stop because when he played video games, I used to tell him, I was like, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't pee, you don't do your schoolwork because you just want to get to the next level. When they care about something, they exhibit all these right qualities. Like your teenage daughters, I guarantee, like, if they came to my house out here and I said, "Hey, I want you to go," the neighbors have horses. We don't. It's better if neighbors have like a boat and horses, then you don't
Yes.
have to worry about it. But if I was like, "Hey, you need to go feed the horses," your daughters would go feed the horses for me. They would do work for us, but they wouldn't do it simple things for you. And so, yes, control your anxiety, take the longer view. Your kids are going to be okay unless you're a train wreck of a person yourself. Then they'll take, right? Like your home has a DNA. I can see by your background, you don't have like stuff all over the place. Like if you're a hoarder, your kids are probably going to grow up and be hoarders. But if your home is reasonably tidy and organized, your kids will eventually come back to that, but just don't expect them to do it when they're 16. I mean, they're just raging hormones right now.
That is a fact. I feel bad for my husband. I'm like, 3 girls in the house and my poor son. My poor son.
They're
So
lucky. They're lucky. They're gonna grow up and know how to relate better to their wives and if they have daughters. So it's a
that's
good
what I'm
thing.
hoping. That's what I'm
I grew up with 3 brothers. We're the most boneheaded humans on the planet.
So, in all of this, how do we avoid feeling like we're always the bad guy? I think that's part of it too. It's just like you're always the disciplinarian or you're always like struggling with your kids when you just want to have a good relationship. How do you get that feeling of and I'm definitely the bad guy in the parenting relationship. I'm always kind of the one that lays down the hammer.
It
How do I stop
tends
feeling like the bad guy?
That tends to be it. My honest answer is I don't know that most moms will ever really feel differently than that. I would just accept that. You know what? Like, unless you are going to drink a lot or something else, which I don't advise, and unless you're a naturally kind of chill, laid back person, Carrie, you will probably always struggle with that, right? And that just means you're conscientious and you care. So I think I'd rather encourage you just to normalize that. This is my day. I always joke when men go to sleep, we forget we have children. But like, oh, mom wakes up at 3 in the morning and the first thought is like, are my kids safe? Are they okay? Like you literally never stop thinking about it. And then you've got a full-time career. Like, moms take the temperature of the home. You're, like, on high alert all the time. So, I do 2 things. One is normalize it. This is the way it is. I've got teenage daughters right now. I'm going to be a little bit anxious and nervous about them because they're driving, and then there's boys, and then there's college, and so yeah, so you're perfectly normal to worry a little bit. But then I would take these steps. And one of them is tonight, maybe with the apology or walking in and saying, you know what, you're crushing it. You're absolutely crushing it. I love the way you're doing this. And you start speaking those things, you'll start actually believing them over time rather than the one thing to work on would just be your own anxiety. Whenever you get the anxious feeling of like, oh, I need to talk to her. How is she going to do? Oh, that's my anxiety. My daughters are actually crushing it. And then you just go through your mental list of like, hey, they're not vaping. They're not doing this. They're not doing all. I like saying, what isn't my child doing? Because for our son who was always in trouble, right? You get a call from the school like, well, your son pushed another kid in the cafeteria line. And I'm like, wait, that's all he did? Shows me he's got initiative and he was hungry. He's a go getter. Like, tell me if he stabs another kid in the back with scissors and draws blood. I'll be concerned. Right. So I used to have to do those things of like, wait, he did that? Okay, but what didn't he do? Right? Like a teenager stayed out past curfew and was 15 minutes late. Still can be a consequence, but it's not like he was out till 3 in the morning and thought that was okay. Right? Like so perspective helps a little bit. Like, yeah, my and little kids are supposed to be a little bit dopey. So
I try to do that, especially with myself. I've already shared. I didn't make the best choices. I used to cut school a lot in middle school, and the things I was doing, I compare my kids to who I was back then, and I'm like, they are like so much better than I was.
yes,
And
you're
if
like,
I
wait.
turned out okay, there's hope for them.
Yeah, they're gonna be great Carrie, I would adopt your kids right now, like, they've grown up in your home, like, they're good kids. It's good to think back and say, "What did I do when I was a 17-year-old boy? What did I do when I was a 30-year-old boy?" So, I think moms and dads, you relax a little bit, spend I like breaking things down, like, not like, "You need to change your entire parenting paradigm." That's why men don't listen, right? They're like, "Wait, that's too much." But for the next 3 days, here's what I can do. I walk into my child's room and I just notice one thing they have done well that day. And I just simply observe it and recognize it. Hey, honey, nice job with that. Hey, I appreciate you doing that. And then I walk out of the room, like plant lots of seeds for the next 3 days or the next week. And then you start to develop some new habits. And then every time you kind of catch yourself lecturing, you say, oh, my bad. That was just my own anxiety. Fact is, I've seen you do X and Y this week. Shows me you're growing up. And then you just walk out of the room. Like I would just plant all these little good seeds because that's what they want. Like Casey and I do a lot of hikes out here. We live out west. And I try to break records for my age group. And sometimes I try to break his records. But when we're trying to get a record for one of these big hikes, him saying, like, Dad, you're slacking off. You know what? You're not doing that's not motivating. But while we're hiking, he's like, Dad, you're a beast. You've got this. You're going to crush this. I actually work harder then when it's positive because I want to live up to the higher expectations than just not failing. So, all moms and dads for the next week, just walk in and motivate that way. Hey, like how you handled that. Hey, it was really cool how you did that, how you did that assignment. Not the way I would have done it, even if they stayed up and they procrastinated till 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Because we want to say, well, honey, if you would have prioritized and made a list and started 2 days ago, you would have, but right, that's because what we all want to do. Instead, if you came in and say, you know what was cool? When it came down to crunch time, this assignment was important to you. You stayed up till 2 a.m. You know what that tells me? Persistence shows me you focus when the going gets tough and you pulled it out. Fist bump. You were clutch. Now inside you're like, but it would have been better if you would have got it done on Tuesday, right? That's so hard to do, isn't it?
It
But
is.
just think about that child who's like, yeah, I'm clutch. I pull through. Well, but aren't we encouraging them to stay up late? No, because they already know staying up till 2 a.m. is not the right path. But just coming in with a snotty tone of like, that's going to ruin your sleep. Yeah, no effing duh. Right? Like, sorry for the language there,
That's right.
but it's like, of course, they already know that. It's like, I'm tired and crabby this morning, but I would rather have someone come in and say, clutch, 2 a.m. You got a good grade on that? That's awesome. And then what you want is later, maybe 3 months from now, after they get tired of 2 a.m. cramming, they come and say, hey, mom, could you help me with that a little bit? Because this 2 a.m. thing, it's just too much stress. And then instead of snotty tone, you're like, okay, so here's what I found is helpful. And I make a list and then I come up with, hey, Tuesday night, I'm going to have a rough draft done. And then I'm going to give myself a reward for that. And if you get your rough draft done on Tuesday night, we'll go out and grab a pizza. We'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings and we'll celebrate that. See how that works? You're still getting what you want, but you've built your relationship and you didn't cause them to tune your voice out.
I love that, and I hope it works because I will try it. The day that they'll come to me and say, "Hey, can you help me with my homework?" I'm like, "I got a teaching degree. I'm a time management coach." I'm like, "How do you not take the tools that I'm trying to give you?" But,
You know what? Can I give you one more? I know we're getting long on time.
oh, I don't mind. I love this conversation.
See, it almost works against you that you're a coach. This is a really cool, interesting thing about strong willed kids. They want to own it themselves. So I noticed something interesting with our son Casey. I was really good. I was a really good athlete. So ball sports, all of that stuff. Guess what? He was never interested. So he learned how to skate and he skis. It's two things I'm not good at. So I can't come in, Casey, let me show you proper form. And throughout his life, he has chosen things. And I don't know if it's subconscious or not, but he plays guitar, he's musical, all the things I'm not good at. And so you being a coach, they're not gonna be like, oh, I've got this free coach. She's amazing at this. It's more about drawing them. They will eventually come to you, but it might not be until college. And they'll be like, hey, mom, can you help me with this time management thing? And you're like, well, it's not about managing your time. It's about managing your energy. And you've got to reward yourself for smaller goals, all those things. Just keep doing it. And they will come to you eventually. But It's really interesting insight. I notice this a lot if I have working with two parents who are like doctors or, super highly educated parents. You know what the kid's thinking? How can I ever surpass you? It's like, you're a neurologist and you're a corporate attorney. Like, where's my ceiling here? I will never live up to your expectations. And so sometimes they just choose their own path because they'd rather own their own area because they might know, like, oh, you're a coach in this? Well, I'm never going to be able to please you. So just be mindful of that when they come to you. But anyway, I'm excited for you to have the talk about being clutch at 2 a.m. It's awesome.
That's great. So, any last words of advice for parents with strong-willed kids?
You know what? I'll end on this because it's a positive one. Enjoy them because along the way of trying to fix them, correct them, trying to change who they are, we kind of forget to enjoy who they are. And I remember on our kind of path that we were on, I remember a day when Casey came with one of those smart aleck thing. Oh, I know what it was. I told him to do something. He was like, wow. And right, because he was too lazy to say whatever. And I remember thinking, okay, the previous 430 times I've reacted to him and then gone off on like, I never would have said that to my dad. And I said, you know what I like about you, Case, is that you're such a good thinker. It's like you have insight into human nature. And you came up with that response because all of your friends just say whatever, roll their eyes. And you came out with, wow. And that tells me you're independent and you don't want to be like everybody else. And I remember I gave him a fist bump and I said, I love that response. Now, you've lost your driver's license for a week because of your disrespect, but I'm not upset at you. I just want you to know, like, that's not going to work for me. Oh, I'll give you this as a final thing. I want you to know this, moms and dads. The very traits that irritate you most right now are probably the very traits that will make them wildly successful as adults because our son's 31. I watch him in his other work. He is a take charge leader. He handles conflict really well. And I joke it's because he always created so much conflict. He's very comfortable with conflict. But all those traits of like, he's very blunt with things, he's very direct in how he does things, a lot of energy. Those are all the traits that his bosses really like about him as an adult. They just make them hard to raise as kids. So harness those things, enjoy them. Your
Oh,
kids are
and
going to
I
be
I
great,
could
Carrie.
I could totally see their personality traits and how they're gonna be successful with them. As frustrating as they are to me, and I will start celebrating them. That's great advice.
Awesome.
So where can my listeners find you? Because I know parents of strong-willed children are gonna be hunting you down.
You know what? I just look up the Calm Parenting podcast. You'll find it. It's on all the platforms. I try to make it like 22 to 25 minutes, one focus for each episode. And then if you have social media, I'm really active on Instagram, which last year I swore I would never be on. But again, that's one of those things where my son was like, Dad, you have to be on Instagram. And so I tend to answer questions there and interact, and it's at Calm Parenting Podcast.
And I
So
love your Instagram. That's how we found you. We feel like you talk to us weekly. So I
awesome.
definitely recommend everyone check it out. And I will link everything in the show notes. Thank you so much, Kirk, for joining us today, for sharing your wisdom, for telling us that there's a beautiful light at the end of this melting tunnel
Maybe
of
not a
strong
beautiful
children.
light, but a light. Carrie, you're an awesome mom. Keep up the awesome work.
Aw, thank you. Here's my biggest takeaway from my conversation with Kirk. Parenting a strong willed child is an absolute adventure and not always the kind that you signed up for. And if you're like me, a nurturer, an empath, or someone who just wants to help, it can feel extra challenging. Throw in a little bit of perfectionism, and it's a serious recipe for frustration because strong willed kids don't want to be nurtured or fixed. They want their independence, they want to figure things out themselves. And that's okay. The truth is, they're going to be just fine. I was a strong willed kid myself, and I think I turned out pretty okay. So take a deep breath, mamas. Your strong willed child is going to do amazing things in this world. Give them the space to figure it out. Trust the process and know that their determination is going to serve them well. I'm so grateful that Kirk came on the podcast this week, and I really hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. If you haven't checked out Kirk's podcast yet, go check it out. It's the Calm Parenting Podcast. The link is in the show notes. And I'd be so grateful if you would take a second and rate the show. Writing a review is even better. It really helps us grow, and it's going to help me help more moms just like you. Sending you so much love and light until next time on Mom Life, Career Life with Carrie Pat. Before you go, if you found this podcast helpful, I would be so grateful if you would take a minute, go on over to iTunes and leave me a review. If you have other stressed out mamas in your life that you feel this podcast could help, take a screenshot of this episode, post it on your Instagram stories and tag me, and let them know that they are not alone and they can create balance in their life too. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover or you just want to connect, DM me on Instagram at mom.wife.career.life or come on over and hang out in our free Facebook community, Work-Life Balance for Working Moms. Sending you so much love and light until next time on Mom Life, Career Life with Carrie Pat.